Power down immediately or risk full consequences.
What is that?
There was a rather large question coming out of last week's instalment, and that was, where's Kino? Is he safe? Is he alive? Oh, okay. Phew, glad we cleared that up. Okay, so, where are we at this week?
I'll have them clear the room if you want to be alone.
I don't want to be alone. I want Mama Marva.
I'm not crying, you're crying!
Alright, just checking my notes, and I don't think anything else happened, but... Damn! Why do people have the Falcon as their favourite?
He's out of line, but he's right.
Welcome back, folks, or welcome, folks. Good to have you all here. We're settling in for a rather brief video delving into my thoughts on this week's episode of Star Wars Andor, titled Daughter of Ferrix.
Cool.
If I'm perfectly honest, this episode wasn't exactly filled to the brim with content. There were aspects worth mentioning and certainly a lot of plot progression, even with the titled character barely included in this week's installment. Though, let's not forget, this isn't a trend unique to the series. Remember Boba Fett?
Hello? Is it me you're looking for?
Good job.
But there were 3 points of vital information that I feel audiences need to be aware of heading into the finale for next week. The first being Marva. Her death gives nothing to come back for and everything to fight for. Like Yulaf, as a motivation for Kino, she absolutely has to be a pressure point for Andor going forward that pushes him into action and everything we see him do thereafter in Rogue One. The way it was played out felt genuine. There's an element to character deaths in shows where you don't want to see the character leave us if you support them and enjoy them enough. But then there are times when it's necessary to drive a plot forward, move our characters along to their endgame, or quite simply because the plot has no further use for them. I say this has to. It will undoubtedly light the fire in the people of Ferrix and bring Andor back to them in an effort to spark the galaxy-wide rebellion that at this point is steadily brewing, but will become a public force to be reckoned with in the future. Remembering as well that the events of this series are occurring concurrently with Star Wars Rebels, so the action is already underway across the galaxy. The way the Empire could be written to exploit this and maybe move in on any of the rebel activity on Ferrix while the people are mourning the loss of Marva could serve as another potential motivator for Andor to return home and add further significance to her death as a means to unite everyone around him, and hopefully he could lead an army of resistance against those on Ferrix. The scene with B2 got me feeling rather heavy with emotion for a moment as they utilised his stature and that one big eye to establish the droid's feelings in this moment, with some clever camera work and animatronics. This was particularly fascinating to see when you consider that droids are supposed to be a simple combination of wires and bolts, but yet there's a level of empathy in them that shouldn't be possible in some cases, but it also isn't unheard of in Star Wars when you consider we've had R2, BB-8, Chopper, BD-1, Ned, and Lola, just to name a few, who all have significant personalities, and in the case of R2, was explained to be especially profound when given that his memory banks have never been wiped. This could likely be the case for B2, as he does look like an elderly droid, and a fairer understanding as to why he was so depressed, but all of it combined to make a beautiful moment and, honestly, made me feel bad for a droid. We got a little more insight into Saw's connection with the events of Rogue One, and a little more setup here with his interaction with Luthen, as Saw is aware that Luthen is trying to protect someone, but currently unaware that it's Cassian, and because of his inquisitive nature, shall we say, Saw's radical ideals also don't match up with Luthen, and Luthen had to be especially brazen to get him to back down, even pulling a gun on him to get his attention in this one. This was certainly some useful context, potentially for Season 2, to hopefully bring Andor and Saw together, as I couldn't find any evidence of them meeting in Rogue One, and Saw, as we've established, is not one to let things go lightly. The last worthy thing of mention in my mind is Luthen's ship, and Luthen himself. the abilities that he truly possesses, we got a firmer understanding of in this one, and certainly rounds out everything we've been given to understand him throughout the season. We got an idea of how ruthless and calculating he was in his interactions with the Imperial spy and Mon Mothma, and of course upon first meeting Andor, but this entire sequence offered up a far more compelling side to him, and even adds history to him without saying a single line about it. In the way that he outmaneuvers the Empire and how he took evasive action would only occur if he'd been through this situation before, and not to mention the flight capabilities that he possesses.
I'll try spinning, that's a good trick!
He was almost flawless when it came to zipping around the atmosphere and taking out 2 TIE fighters and a cruiser in a few moves or less, and felt almost akin to Anakin in levels of competence of aerial combat.
This is where the fun begins.
On a more personal note though, if I'm honest, the final fight sequence at the end was pretty fucking awesome, and adds the visual spectacle that you want from a show that's titled Star Wars, whilst keeping it within the context and not descending into another western space adventure like The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett or Kenobi. It was refined, as likely due to the limited budget of the series, but worked effectively to establish Luthen's range of skills and add an understanding to how big of a power player he is in this. The rest of the episode, though, in my mind, felt pretty inconsequential right now, as we bounced around a few times between Val and Mothma, whose side of the story at this point I'm actually losing interest in, and we had a brief glimpse back into Cyril's movements, which again just aren't grabbing me.
Don't give me excuses! Give me results!
With the finale on the horizon, I'm curious to see how this will conclude. If it will be a culmination of events with payoffs for everybody but Andor, Saw, Mothma and maybe even Luthen, or will the journey for the season essentially act like Loki's series did, where the first and second seasons weren't meant to be divided at any point, they were supposed to be one solid piece of content. My hope at least will be that we get some payoffs, so it doesn't feel too bloated and restrictive when we get to season 2, with attempting to balance too many plots, and that they remain with what's been established as our core 3 at least, in Luthen, Mothma and Andor. With both Andor and The Walking Dead concluding next week, I'm curious to know if we have any double feature fans watching this one. Which finale are you most excited to see? That's going to do it from me though for this one. Thank you for stopping by, but don't forget to subscribe on your way out as I've got much more planned and on the way. And drop a like as it does help things out more than you're aware. Until next time though everyone, take care and may the Force be with you.